We have our medallions, very nice medallions put together here, and we're selecting background fabric for it. And we can get hung up with that. Sometimes you overthink it. Oftentimes the first impulse is to go with something neutral, but as you can see with these medallions that we have here, that this particular neutral seems to wash them out. They don't seem to have any dimension to them. Still very nice medallions, but getting the right background fabric's real key. You want to make them pop, or you want to really showcase them, and the best way to do that is to get a background that creates that effect. So this was one neutral that we tried at first impulse, and what we're going to do is going to replace that with perhaps some different solids that might bring out some of the stronger features of those medallions. So I'll set this one aside, and the first thing that I always see when I'm looking at these is there something that will ground it or frame it? I think it's always important on any quilt work or project piece to do what you can to showcase it, and sometimes a good solid will do just that. So we've got a jet black. This happens to be a Kona black, and we'll see just at the placement of these, you can see immediately how they just pop, and that provides a very stark contrast. And when they're placed into the piece, into the project itself, and when it's completed, they almost will take a three-dimensional effect, like they are just jumping out at you. Black will work on these because it is a root color of the medallions, but there are other colors in there that you can see, and we'll try one of those others. I see a hunter green or a dark green, which we'll grab. These are solids, by the way, and solids will work fine to a point. The problem with a solid, and I run into this, is that you get one shot because it's a solid. It's one color. You may consider using a fabric line that works like a solid but isn't a solid, and that would be a marble or a shadow blush. A marble or a shadow blush actually will carry in it 5 to 6 ink tones, allowing it to reach into more color tones, so that makes it easier to function as a blender with a coordinating fabric. So you can see what's happened here. We've got this hunter green behind the same medallions, given again giving them dimension, giving them a real impact. And you know, it just depends. I often ask my customers what are the color schemes that they have where they're going to be placing their project. If it's in a bedroom, well, you know, is there a color scheme? And I try to aim for something that will coordinate with that. You know, what do they have in terms of draperies or floorings or other color schemes that might be going on? And so that can help guide you on what you're going to be choosing along the way. Same thing with another project here. This is a Harris line of fabric, and I'm just going to grab, for the sake of grabbing it close by here, a neutral. I'm not even going to open this up because I just don't see that as being a possibility. For one thing, there's so much tan and a sandy coloring in the neutrals of these that I just don't see this kind of background being effective. You know, it all depends on what your fabric consists of. What are you making these medallions out of, and what are those color tones? There are many fabrics that you can use it. You'd be making your medallions out of it where that you would want to have a neutral background. But these again aren't going to do it. So what I'm going to do is kind of look and absorb myself into what these colors are as they appear to me. And this is one of those shadow blush fabrics, and you can see that there is a multiple of ink tones, in this case 6 ink tones on the selvage that have gone into this fabric, making it very functional. It can reach into more color tones when it's used to blend. Again, if you're using a solid, you get one shot, but if you're using a shadow blush, you have multiple colors. And this would be perhaps a possibility. Again, it would allow these to have strong contrast, nice framing, something that would give you some dimension, give it some pop. The other thing is we're only looking at the background squares. You know, your piece might be constructed of additional sashing, coarse borders, maybe flange, binding. All of those would have color elements and would go into the construction of your piece. When we're only looking at the background here, we're not getting the effect of the sashing perhaps and some other things that would go into it. But this is a possibility. But there's another color in here that kind of grabs my attention. And we'll pull it out and see what it does. Sometimes it's just a matter of elimination. It's all guesswork up to this point. In fact, it's all guesswork until the project is completed, and then you can see what it does. But you can see that you've got some dark burgundy or maroon, very deep tones in it, in these, and this helps to bring those out, this lettering. And you know, even though that's a minor part of your medallion, what it does, it allows you to capture that, and it allows the other elements of color to stand on their own. Again, it brings dimension, gives it some life. This is a very dark tone. Again, it's a shadow blush with multiple ink tones, and that's very effective. Another shadow blush, and I just grabbed these as I went. Don't know if it will work or not, but this is a little bit lighter. Again, has the multiple ink tones, allows it to blend into more color tones. And this may be the right tone for these, may not be, but you know, this is what we call auditioning, and it gives you a chance to see what effect you get with different color tones, and you know, whether or not it appeals to you. I think frankly it does appeal to me for this piece because it's reaching into these lighter color tones for this medallion. I think it's very workable. You don't see those color tones with this medallion. Wouldn't immediately suggest that it's going to blend as well, but remember, every medallion is going to be different, and you know, the whole impact of the use of this color could be you know, very workable and provide a lot of dimension to your piece. Audition your fabrics, don't overthink it. Sometimes the color coordinating becomes a little too much to envision, and sometimes what works better is to just try to limit it to the value of your colors, light, medium, dark. You can do that very simply with filtered glasses, the red filtered glasses or even the green filtered glasses. When you are looking at your fabrics, what those glasses will do, those filters will eliminate the color aspect, but it will give you the impression of its intensity, whether it's a light, a medium, or dark. And when you do that, then you can be able to coordinate your colors according to those simple categories of color, and then be able to break them out, place them where you think they would be most effective, eliminate the need to get an impression of the color coordination, but allowing you to use the intensity to coordinate your fabrics. So that's kind of a rundown, a summary of the way it can be approached. That's my approach. The other thing is I find it easier when I'm dealing one-on-one, when I'm asked to coordinate color. Sometimes you can get too many opinions going, too many thoughts, too many impressions, and then it begins that process of overthinking that we talked about. It's just kind of an all over impression that you get from the onset that will lead you, I think, in the right direction. So have fun. This is a great project. We have a lot of fun doing it. It turns this project into a legacy piece and something that you can certainly be proud of and have a lot to talk about once you've completed it. Good luck.
Okay, now you have your medallions done. Here you can see this is the normal size, the 7.5-inch medallion. And as we've told you before, you can make smaller ones. This one happens to be a 4.5, and this one's a 3.5. That is, when you are cutting them, your strips would be 7.5 for this, 4.5 for that size, and 3.5 for that size. Now, one thing that will change is the size, or may change, doesn't have to, on the size of your background. But once you have finished this, we'll show you that first. It goes on to a 16.5-inch square. Okay, now we need to find the middle. So all you do is fold it in half. Make sure you have it nice and even there. Just finger press. You may press it with an iron if you wish, but it is not necessary. Okay, then you're going to fold it in half again. And again, you are going to finger press. So, and the important part is right along the edge here, because that's the part that you're going to actually be matching with. Part in the middle is going to be covered. So you just need to really be able to see those edges. Don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but you've got your folds right there and right here. Now you're going to take your medallion and you're going to fold it in half. Okay, and it should fold pretty easily. It's going to be right along two of the seams. And you're going to just lay that right against the seam. It's going to be laid right against this line. And here you have a choice. You're either going to be matching by valleys, this part, or by points. We're going to start with valleys. So I have the valley up here. Then I'm going to open it up. And you can see that we'll just make this valley match and this valley match. Then we go over and we make sure that this valley matches, and so does this one. And once you have those valleys matching, you're ready to go. If you wish to do it having them match on the points, then of course what you're going to do is just move it so you have the points matching up here and the points matching over here. Okay, it does not matter which way you have it. It's whichever one you think is most pleasing to you. And once you have this matched up, okay, let's make sure we got that set up okay. Yep. Then you are going to start pinning. Okay. In general, you don't need a huge amount of pins. It tends not to move a whole lot, but whatever you're comfortable with. I like to have pins in every one, and I tend to go across here, and then in this one I'll go up this direction, and then this one I'll go across this way. Don't know why, it just seems to work for me. And you can see on these I actually did them along the side. Okay. The big thing to remember when you're appliquing is that once you get down here to the valley or up here to the point, there's more material. So watch those places especially carefully, because that's where your material will probably move on you. Okay? Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, we'll take these pins out, is if you have a smaller medallion, you obviously can use a smaller background. So this particular background, which is 8.5, this one's 16.5, the 8.5 works very nicely with the 3.5. Okay, if you want to have keep this ratio the same no matter what size you make, look in chapter 5 part 2 of our book, 5.2, and it has a chart in there and explains how that works. However, I do want to show you that here on the 16.5, you may want to put a smaller one. Obviously, it works fine. And if you have a couple small ones, you might even want to put one up there and one down here on the same big one. You can do that. It's one of the nice things about this, you can do whatever you want. Okay, you can put your medallions on whatever size background you want. However, do make sure that you have enough room to for your seams. Okay, and as I said, looking at chapter 5, part 2, it will give you an idea of how to come up with those numbers. Okay, now you've got everything on. You've got your medallion on, and you need to decide on what kind of applique you wish to do. I'm going to show you several examples. Now you will notice that up here I have a tag. If you're going to do a whole bunch of them, it's a good idea to make this tag that tells you what stitch you decided to use, where you set your needle, what the width and length of your stitch is, because if you do get interrupted and don't get finished, and you do want them all to look alike, you might forget. Okay, so on this one I used a regular zigzag and matching thread. So you can look along here and you can just see that it's just a regular zigzag. Now if you want a really tight zigzag, or what's sometimes called a lightning bolt, that is what this one is. And if you're going to do something this tight, this or perhaps a satin stitch, something really tight, you will want to put your pins very close together up here, because being this tight, it will move on you. Okay. Whatever kind of thread you do decide to use, you can make it stand out, such as this one. This is a blanket stitch, and I use darker thread so that you can see exactly where everything is. If you don't want it to stand out that much, then you can use a thread that matches. This may change. I mean, you might have to use different threads depending upon your medallions, because the medallions are also different. That this darker thread may actually disappear, whereas on this one, as you can see, it stands out quite well. The other thing you can do is to use the mono poly thread. the monofilament thread, invisible thread. It has a variety of names, and it comes in both clear and in smoke. And so this again gives you a more of a disappearing. This is also a blanket stitch. And do remember that on most machines, for a blanket stitch, you can change how far you want it to come up into your medallion and how far apart each of these are. So play with your machine. Definitely do it on something, a trial ahead of time, and then make notes of what all of your settings are.